So this is the 15 hours GMT edition of the Khoodeelaar television channel, Baby Angel Geronimo editions. Part B at 15:15 GMT on Tuesday, 6th of December 2022. We have this Des Fleet Street of Lies, because what they're doing, they are having a go at Harry and Meghan. And they're having a go at Harry and Meghan as if they, the Daily Mail and the Scum and the Star, are appointed in a kind of religious way, but it cannot be religious way at all. It's evil. Appointed to continue to perpetrate the lies that Harry and Meghan have been uncovering about the hierarchy in the House of Windsor. Now, the more they do that, the more confirmed the evidence get. And eventually, a point will come that Fleet Street would indeed be the street of shame. Today, Tuesday, the 6th of December 2022, at the Daily Mail, on the front page, the lead, bombshell new trailer, laced with race and hate slurs. Race is not a slur. Hate is not a slur. Because the Daily Mail is the main definitive hate and race spreading organ in all of England. And I remember in Dhaka, it was then East Pakistan, and the British Council in the Nilkhet area, which is the Dhaka University, Nilkhet area, the British Council used to stock the Daily Mail. It used to be, in the 1960s, the Daily Mail used to be broadsheet, bigger size like the Telegraph nowadays. Only the Telegraph in the Fleet Street now publishes in broadsheet format. And the Daily Mail, I was reading that in Dhaka in the 1960s. And the Daily Mail, I mean, reading it as far as I was, thousands of miles from London, I couldn't believe it. It is absolutely, completely poisonous, hateful. I was not getting enlightened by the Daily Mail and the British Council. The British Council, which I visited for investigative fact-checking reasons, is staffed full of the likes of the Daily Mail. The British Council didn't have anything about the world. It was about British. But the British was defined by race, racism, prejudice, exclusion, and so on. That was in the 1960s. So the Daily Mail today, Tuesday, the 6th of December, 2022, claiming that what Harry is saying about the hierarchy in the monarchy, spreading hatred against Meghan. That is absolutely the basic minimum evidence, fact. It's not because Harry or Meghan saying it, but that is the fact. If there was any doubt as to the authenticity and the accuracy of these, then Suzanne Hussey, of course, has put paid to this kind of pretentious lying by the Daily Mail. Suzanne Hussey came forward at a palace do organized in the name of Camilla, King Brian's wife, and Suzanne Hussey absolutely clearly said racist, hateful stuff about the woman Ngozi Fulani, born and brought up in Britain. And she was so stupid, this Suzanne Hussey. I mean, this is called completely illogical, the aside that she uttered about her, Suzanne Hussey, having been to France. I mean, what had her going to France to do with where Ngozi Fulani came from? Because obviously Hussey was targeting Ngozi Fulani as an African person. France is not African. And anyone from England going to France any number of times does not constitute anything comparable. I mean, what was that about? So the Daily Mail is also doing this because 3 days ago, on a Friday, well, 4 days ago, Friday, the Guardian, I think, Friday, or I think it's last week anyway, the Guardian ran the story that the Daily Mail is delaying the confession. It has been ordered to publish. Effectively, procedurally, it had been ordered to publish the consolidated list of claims against the abhorrent behavior the Daily Mail had indulged in against Elton John, Elizabeth Hurley, Doreen Lawrence, and of course, Harry Windsor. Now, Elizabeth Hurley is by no stretch of the imagination a supporter of Meghan in that way. And her legal action against the Daily Mail group is nothing whatsoever to do with any solidarity she might have or she might harbor with Meghan Markle. It's Elizabeth Hurley whose privacy had been invaded, who had been violated herself by the Daily Mail. So every time that you see, public see the pictures of the likes of Elizabeth Hurley in the Daily Mail, and of course she is exhibited, offered as an object of desire, extreme sexual desire. Every time people see that kind of thing, how many people would actually think how many dirty deeds the Daily Mail had undergone or gone through before publishing such an otherwise desirable image of the likes of Elizabeth Hurley? So it's not Meghan Markle or Harry Windsor who are to blame for the hatred that drives the Daily Mail's so-called journalism. And then where do you go? If you turn to the Sun, scum, Murdoch scum, it says Sussex lies and videotape. I mean, what kind of cheap, idiotic heading is that? Again, it's the same set of lies. And what they're doing, I mean, in the press preview edition on Sky News broadcast last night, that is the night of the 5th of December, the Guardian's political editor, current political editor, Pippa Creera, is a Scottish woman. Pippa Creera, I mean, what is her fitness to be called the political editor of the Guardian? Pippa Creera repeated the same, absolutely same kind of intolerance towards Harry and Meghan. She shouldn't have done that, because the Guardian, of all publications, had published specific allegations against the Daily Mail, evidence against the Daily Mail that it was obfuscating, making excuses, pretenses, lying, in other words, in order to delay the publication of the deeds, bad deeds that the Daily Mail had indulged in. And the Guardian, whoever published that piece, whoever edited that particular package, carried the picture of the complete criminal, Paul Dacre. Paul Dacre in that picture, pictured with Doreen Lawrence, Stephen Lawrence's mom. Now, everything the Daily Mail does and stands for is at odds with that kind of partnership. Paul Dacre shows the partnership with the Lawrences. And why? Because it's not genuine. It's not consistent with the Daily Mail's racism, fascism, appeasing of the Nazis in the 1930s, and the de facto appeasing of the Nazis and fascists and supporters of genocide against Muslims today. Because that headline that the Daily Mail boasts about the killers of Stephen Lawrence, murderers, it wasn't an ordinary, straightforward Daily Mail kind of journalistic piece. It was something to do with Paul Dacre himself having personally known a decorator that was working at his home, who happened to be Neville Lawrence, Stephen Lawrence's father. It is like one in a billion statistical possibility that kind of coincidence would happen. And it did happen. And because of that, Dacre decided to run that story. When Dacre was editor, actually, in the post of editor, the Daily Mail, murderers. And it said that the murderers would sue the Daily Mail if they were innocent. Of course, the Daily Mail knew that they wouldn't sue the Daily Mail. So that is one in a billion exception. The Daily Mail has never before, nor since that headline about Stephen Lawrence, done anything remotely comparable against racism, against hatred of Muslims, which are the most dominant and most powerful drivers of the Little English zombified readership circulation of the Daily Mail group. And for the that Harry's claim about the hierarchical role played in the House of Windsor, the monarchy, against Meghan Markle is a fake claim. It takes the biscuit because it was the scum that has still now unfinished business. This claims, a maximum number of claims against the Sun group, let's say, of phone hacking and stealing stuff from the other people's homes, especially so-called celebrities. So fakery, if anything, if any title, any publishing house in Britain kind of deserves to be called fake, it is the scum. Because during the Levison inquiry, the heat of attention on this scum group and Dirty Digger Rupert Murdoch was so unavoidable that Dirty Digger scrapped the news of the world, completely abolished the news of the world. And that style of journalism, because although it has been replaced in terms of circulation by the scum on Sunday, it is nowhere near as sensational. And the reduction of sensationalism in the journalism of Dirty Digger's titles is a direct result of the disclosures that were kind of published as part of the hearings in the Levison inquiry. Although the inquiry itself, typically the inquiry itself failed to live up to the expectations, and its recommendations about the future of the media fell way, way, way short of the expectations and what is needed. But the fact remains that the proceedings before the Levison inquiry were absolutely, much of it, many of the disclosures were spot on. Many of the disclosures were spot on, including the fact, I mean, this is the thing, that Rupert Murdoch's real mistress, Rebecca Brooks, I mean, she is paid millions of pounds. I mean, she has not got either the brains or the talents or the wisdom, let alone any ethics or morality. So what is she capable of? What is she delivering for Murdoch, who pays her millions? I mean, this is outrageous. And it turned out that she was being, the only comparison that can be made about her is a comparison that takes the narrative, this commentary, all the way through thousands of years into the history of southern India, where the images, the idols of women, images of women being worshipped as the sexual goddesses by the man, dominated the scene, the landscape in the southern India, across southern India. That is so she is like, Rebecca Brooks was treated like a Hindu goddess, the old, very, very old ancient Hindu sex goddess. And who were the worshippers? Tony Blair, no less. Call me Dave filthy Cameron, Dave Cameron, and that ilk. So the proceedings before the Levison inquiry, not the actual report that Brian Levison, who is now retired, actually published, because typically Brian Levison was only another English judge, very cowardly and lacking real moral fervor, which is the reason why Cameron chose Brian Levison as the chair of the inquiry, because he knew that Levison would not sink the boat, rock the boat, whatever. So essentially, what this scum is saying against Harry, that he is faking it, it applies to them on the facts, on the evidence, on the records, just like in the case of the kind of hearings between February and April 2015 that took place before the election commissioner, Richard Morey, on the petition brought against Luther Rahman by the four petitioners. The proceedings, the actual witnesses gave so much more interesting evidence than even Morey actually recognized in his ruling. Because what he did, Morey was timid as well. Morey should have imposed a much more rigorous and much more lasting and substantial penalty against Luther Rahman and his co-criminals and crooks. But he didn't. Because for example, even the PricewaterhouseCoopers, the accountants report into the corruption by Luther Rahman's regime in Tower Hamlets, exposed far too many compelling items of evidence about Luther Rahman's corruption in abusing the funds and finance and the resources of Tower Hamlets Council during the period that he was incumbent the first time. I mean, his corruption is continuing with the abuse of the council-owned properties in Sutton Street area of Commercial Road. Those properties being abused by Luther Rahman, effectively giving away millions of pounds worth of resources, properties, and similar facilities to the convicted fraudster, criminal crook, the so-called founder of Channel S, Mahi Firdaus Jalil. He stole somebody else's name, Firdaus. So the criminals petitions or the inquiry like Levison have quite a lot more significant evidence heard before them than the chairs or the leaders of the inquiries are prepared to recognize or acknowledge. So there is this big gap between the evidence that is available and the decisions by the so-called judicial bodies or judicial persons. So Levison was praised a lot of the times during the actual hearing, but Levison has not been praised since his recommendations, because the recommendations were absolutely not what had been expected by the evidence justifiably, and what the ordinary public or the public that are not zombified would have expected. And it actually reminds our commentary, if you like, is informed by the fact that all the inquiries that have been established or set up, carried out into the British media, so called, over the last 100 years, all the inquiries have behaved in the same way. The evidence put to the inquiries have been more rigorous, more like the truth, many cases, the abuse by the media, the barons, and the organs. But the actual conclusions by the commissions lag behind those evidence. This is my finding. This is what I'm saying. Reading the various commissions, and it's not just the media, Scarman report, the Macpherson report. This Scarman and Macpherson are about race and racism. And if you look at the actual evidence before Scarman, actual evidence before Macpherson, in fact, the Macpherson report halfway through, or at the beginning, the first part, had to be derailed, if you like, or got derailed because people giving evidence were insisting on the evidence that there were so many racists in the London Metropolitan Police. So many racists, not some unnameable institutional racists, but individual racists. And people who are absolutely agog. They were naming names around the inquiry, Macpherson inquiry. So what did Macpherson, another retired judge, what did he do? Macpherson intervened, and it was Macpherson who created the phrase institutional racism. He is the liar who lied and inserted that poisonous lie to deny the existence of racism, individual racism. So any black person, well, so many black persons are stooges created in the fashion of Macaulay. Black on the outside and English on the inside. English in the worst possible racist sense, not a decent sense. The Macpherson has created a legacy that he has left behind, which is being imitated by mental slave blacks. There is no such thing as institutional fucking racism. You shits. Racism is individual. So when individual racism get together and are added up, it is not institutional racism. It is still individual racism because the liability, the responsibility for individuals being racist is evaded if it then gets turned into institutional racism, and nobody is held to account. So the only way, the first thing, evidentially, that must happen and has been prevented from happening because of the imposition of the diversionary, racist diversionary phrase, institutional racism, is to hold the individuals, racist individuals, individually accountable. That way, they cannot hide behind the cover of institution. And that extrapolates and takes into account the other forms of hatred and prejudice and whatever. So this is what the individuals at the scum are doing. They are being racist, and they're being hateful. And so is the Daily Mail. And there is no number. There is no number comparable to the Mail or the scum that can be circulated to counter. Circulated among number of people, that is, to counter the lies of the Daily Mail and the Daily Scum. There is no number, because the Guardian does not circulate as many copies as the Daily Mail, but the only possible likelihood of the Guardian reaching as many people as the Scum and the Daily Mail, well, not Daily Mail, but the Scum, is the online version of the Guardian. Most visited or most liked or most read. But the Guardian doesn't immediately run a story in defense of the truth about the racism that the Netflix piece is going to report, attributing the actual sourcing it to Harry Wilson. And as has been said, when Brenda was cornered by her own complicity, Brenda was complicit in the knowledge that she was suppressing about all the things that went on against Diana over the years. So many things were done against Diana to smear her, to isolate her, to unsettle her, to unnerve her, that all of those things could be easily brought to an end if Brenda had the moral courage and the morality. Because Brenda knew about Camilla and Charles, and she knew that he was wrong. How could Charles be paraded as happily married and all the rest of it? Well, he was not. He was cheating, openly cheating on his wife. And Diana said, it's a candid statement. It's not a statement that has been scripted. There were too many people in the marriage. It was a crowd. There were too many people in the marriage. So it wasn't unknown. It wasn't a secret. And Diana should have been given basic human solidarity and support and comfort and real support by Brenda, but she didn't. So, what extent the allegation by Muhammad Al-Fayad, is true or not, has not been admitted yet, but how Diana was murdered is not in doubt. She was murdered, but how is not detailed publicly. Everyone knows that Diana was murdered. Everyone knows that Diana was murdered. Now, what happened? In the days, in the weeks after Diana was murdered, each day, each hour felt like it lasted like 5 times its length or 10 times its length. And the world waited for Brenda to make a statement, but she didn't. Brenda did not make a statement condoling, showing humans' sadness at the murder of Diana. Okay, she couldn't call it murder because she knew what prevented her from telling the identity, giving the identity. She knew the identity, let's say, or she knew the possible identity or identities of the sources that contributed to Diana's murder. But nothing stopped Brenda from expressing solidarity. Why didn't she express solidarity? That is Brenda's silence. That is the record of Brenda's silence. It's not something that Harry has invented. So if Harry refers to the fact that there was silence, how can Harry be blamed for saying that? He's not making it up. And as Diana's confirmed, she knew that she would be murdered. Now, who would have wanted her murdered? We don't know who would have wanted her murdered. But somebody must have wanted her murdered. Mustn't they? But the fact that she was murdered, the fact that she had feared she would be murdered, and she even knew the way she would be murdered, all of these things are in public, in the public domain, in the actual evidence. So what stopped Brenda from expressing the tiniest amount of sympathy and solidarity? What to make of these brainless zombies, belittling others who mourned Brenda and said that she was unprecedented, she was completely kind of unparalleled, etc., etc. How could they have forgotten her silence about Diana? What kind of human being is it that can stay silent about the murder of their son's wife? The murder of the mother of their two grandsons? I mean, where? What planet? Because when Kate Winslet got into the news by saying to the BBC's Laura Koenigsberg that she couldn't bear the knowledge that a teenaged, very severely disabled child suffering from cerebral palsy called Freya would have to be probably given up to care because her mom could not afford the 17,000 pound power bill that she incurs because of the high volume and high frequency of essential use of power to operate various devices and equipment to look after this child, to keep this child practically alive. Kate Winslet said, literally she said that it destroyed her. That knowledge that the mother would have to give up this child because the mother couldn't afford the bill, it destroyed Kate Winslet. And she said, on what earth, what kind of planet can people do that? Do that to a mom and a disabled teenager, severely disabled teenager, because Freya cannot even speak. And she's kept alive literally by this high octane use of energy to run the devices that she needs at the present state of technology, medical technology, let's say. And if she couldn't pay the bill, 17,000 pounds, then she would have to abandon the child and give her to care. Now that horrified Kate Winslet. Not only was it a humanitarian disaster happening to the family and to the teenager, but the idea that such a vulnerable child, teenage person, would have to be given to care horrified her. Now, what does it say about care in England, in Britain? It says simply, as Kate Winslet has summarized, care is not care at all. Care is there to scare the living daylight out of the person being subjected to care. That is what is happening, to care. And the man who is now currently the Inspector Independent Commissioner on Social Care or something, Berenson, is it Berenhas? I shall check the name soon. He said that the vulnerable people are being abused by care providers. Of course, they're not providing care, are they? They're providing abuse, they're imposing abuse. So that is the culture on the care front. But the Scum and the Daily Mail have not run anything like that about either this teenage girl, Priya. Most certainly not, because in addition to being not a celebrity, Priya is Scottish, isn't she? So the racists in the Daily Mail and the Scum, then the anti-Scottish racists, I mean. But even if the child were English, they would not be running anything like this kind of front page splashes. The fury at Sussex's Netflix claim of war on Meghan. Why not fury? Fury at the knowledge, or fury at hearing the Commissioner on Social Care. Fury at hearing that millions of people, the vulnerable people, are being abused. Why not run any such story? They have never done that. The Scum and the Daily Mail have never done that. They never do that. So when Brenda was given this farewell when she died a few months ago, I mean, the popular sports like I visited a Tesco shop during the weeks after Brenda passed away and her burial. And they had this picture of Brenda on a kind of board outside the Tesco. Several boards showing how the Tesco proprietors of the Tesco community as a whole were heartbroken or whatever about Brenda's passing. I mean, did they do that? Would they have done that about Diana? They most certainly did not do that as far as I can remember. Although Alistair Campbell is reportedly alleged to have coined the propaganda phrase for the propaganda benefit of Tony Blair, saying that Diana was the people's princess, even though she was declared as the people's princess by the then Prime Minister, which couldn't come at a more appropriate time for Blair's publicity, because it happened in the months of Blair, Blair came into power in May 1997, and Diana was murdered in August, 31st of August, I think, 1997. So May, June, July, August, the fourth calendar month. It couldn't have come at a more powerful kind of moment for the incumbent. But there was nothing that the supermarkets did to celebrate Diana, let alone express solidarity and heartfelt whatever. And yet, when Brenda passed away, not only did the Tesco and others express this organized mourning, and I mean, I have noticed any number of Muslims, so called, express their personal grief at the loss of the Queen. How the fuck did these Muslims become the Queen's personal relations? How the fuck? On what basis? So here is Diana's own son. Diana's own son. Brenda's son's wife's son, let's say, being condemned as being fake. Because he is saying that the hierarchy, and what does he mean by the hierarchy? There couldn't be any more authentic hierarchy than the Brenda herself, the Brenda. So Harry is effectively, he may not be naming Brenda, of course he is not. But by hierarchy, that is a very crafty, accurate, structural word, euphemism, that includes Brenda as being part of the structure of hate, incitement of hate, and incitement of discrimination, incitement of intolerance of Meghan Markle. So when she, Brenda that is, was given this completely undeserved and really sick-makingly inappropriate and cruel platform, to justify her cruelty and silence and complicity with the knowledge of who must have done it. For her to say, annus horribilis, how could that be a horrible year for her, staying silent at the heart of Diana, and not a horrible year for the people that actually loved Diana and Diana's own blood, her own children? Harry, did Brenda have a word to say in solidarity with this same Harry who is being vilified today, 6th of December 2022, on the front pages of the Scum, of the Daily Star, of the Daily Mail, of the Daily Express? I don't remember Brenda saying a single word about Harry losing his mum in that murder. So the victim was Harry. The victim was Wills for losing his mum. Victims were those people who genuinely loved Diana. The victim wasn't Brenda. And yet the whole of Fleet Street whole of the British kind of zombie part of the population screamed in chorus, saying it had been their annus horribilis as well, because Brenda had had the annus horribilis herself. What had she suffered? So that is the hierarchy that Harry is talking about. Not only is it not fake, it is the absolute spot on, accurate remark. Well, I don't watch Netflix or whatever, but that is the report, and that report actually truthfully summarizes the reality of what has been happening. Harry was old enough at the time his mom was murdered, because he felt the pain, as did Wills, when the two of them were forced to walk behind the coffin of their mom. And they were made to do all sorts of other very, very hurtful, traumatizing things that should have been spared. But they were put through those rituals in order to put on a show for the benefit of Brenda's monarchy. For the benefit of Brenda's monarchy. So there is this particular part. I mean, there is, as I said, I mean, all these newspapers are having a go at Harry. So for this purpose, this is the part that will not take this commentary onto other issues of updates. We'll end this one here at 52 minutes. 52 minutes, this program, this edition.